Hello, my name's Peter Wren from the I Wanna Believe channel and welcome to Paranormal Encounters. Get ready to journey into the mysterious and unsettling world of the paranormal. In this gripping show, Paranormal Encounters, we delve into the lives of those who have come face to face with the unexplained. Through candid and heartfelt conversations, we bring you the graphic, personal and emotional stories of paranormal witnesses, revealing the chilling realities that lie beyond the veil.
My name is Rob. I'm from Dawson Creek, BC. This is my story of a house that had a massive amount of activity just north of where I live. It all started back, this would be probably 3 years ago. A friend of mine told me about this house where he just had vibes like he was being watched when he was out there. He'd be hearing crickets, birds chirping, all of a sudden it would go dead quiet. So I grabbed up my little bit of gear and I thought, oh, I'll go check it out. And got out there, and as soon as I stepped on the property, you could feel that like an overwatch, like you're being observed from multiple directions. Didn't really hear anything. And you had to walk a little ways to get to this house because it was an old abandoned homestead farmland. And you get to the house and it's just like I don't know how to explain it. It was just like you're in a different era almost. It's just the air that came over top of you. So it was, there was a couple outbuildings on it, like there's a 1, 2, 3, like little sheds. There's a big barn, had a whole bunch of old wood beams stored in it. There's another, like almost, I don't know if they were grain sheds or what further back, but they were all broken. You couldn't get into those because tree wood had grown out through the middle of it. Yeah, it was never a sense of dark there. It was just, you always had this feeling like there's some things, you're being watched from multiple directions. I tried doing some research into it. The only thing I could find out is that there was a husband and wife who lived there. There was a fire, but I couldn't find out if there's fatalities or anything like this. I couldn't find out when it was exactly abandoned. There was one person who lived up the road from there that said they knew the history, but I could never get in contact with them to find out more details. So it was kind of tough because I even went to a real estate place. I couldn't get anything out of it. They had no knowledge of anything up there. There just didn't seem to be any leads on it. And it was just, I had to sort of dig doing investigations on my own to try and find out anything. But I did. There's a couple of EVPs that came through. There was fire, pain, tears that seemed to be connected, but that's all I could really find out that was directly related to what happened on that site. There's other stuff I experienced out there that didn't seem tied into the history of it, but it was just occurrences that happened while I was there. But yeah, it was pretty sporadic and sparse information out there that I could find. So people said they thought they saw lights in the trees. Like as they drive by, they'd see a light or sort of over by the house or floating around the yard, but it would just blink in and out. So I never heard anything about any like kids doing seances or any Ouija boards or any of that stuff out there. It was just lot of people, they just that I was able to talk to just said they'd drive by and they'd step on the gas a little faster to get past it because it was just a vibe that came out of there, that area. When we first got to that location, it was myself, my cousin, and his girlfriend. We decided to go check things out. It was almost like, oh, I found my place. I knew it was just you walked into an energy. It wasn't like electrified, but it just like you walked in and it perked you up, and you're like, okay, it's hard to explain that feeling I experienced. It was, you just knew that this was going to be something was going to happen. It was energized. We were it was the middle of winter. You could hear water running. Like it was 20 below when we first went there. Shouldn't have heard water running. And to me, that just meant that there's an energy flowing there, is how it came across to me. I got no other way of explaining that. Sorry. Okay. So when we first walked in, we sort of just explored around the general immediate vicinity of the house first. We got out there. There was like 2 feet of snow, so we weren't doing too much moving around. Got in there, and we were just sort of like, when you jump in a creek, you stand there, you let the water run around you, fish get used to you. We were sort of doing that, just listening to the house, letting ourselves get accustomed to what was the sounds, were the feelings. And I was using a voice recorder, and I asked the question, is anybody here? And we got nothing. And I said, there's nothing to be afraid of. We're just here to talk, ask questions. And we got a response, we are watching you. And then I didn't hear it at that time because it was an audio recorder. But I did ask, how many of you are out here? And the next thing that came through immediately was hole, like HOLE, hole in the ground. And when I was analyzing all these, listening to everything like this, I remember, you can see in the video I took, right above me was a hole in the ceiling, and it was like, we are watching you, hole. And it was like afterwards, it was like, well, that was kind of interesting. We did later on record 2 orbs coming out of the top of the house where the attic would have been, and it would have been the same vicinity to where that hole was, but it was 2 separate orbs came out. And that was just recorded on a camera phone. But there was a lot of EVPs on that property. We actually recorded a child giggling. Recorded a lot of one word, like I said, tears, flames, pain. A lot of like one word responses. The biggest one was that we are watching you was the longest response we got, and it was clear. Like it was so clear. It was amazing. There was no physical contact. We had feelings. My cousin's girlfriend, she had to leave the area to go back to the truck. She says she just wasn't feeling welcomed or comfortable there. Both my cousin and I, we both said it multiple times. It feels like something's coming near us, but we were never physically touched. You just get like, it was like a pressure wave was slowly hitting us. There's a few times we kind of stopped and looked at each other, and we're like, he's holding his chest. And I said, are you okay? And he says, it's just, I have to force myself to breathe. He says it's not, he wasn't painful, but it just felt he had to put more effort into taking a breath. And I walked over there, and I was like, it was the same thing. It was like, I had to take a deeper breath, and there was nothing there. There was an old tree stump. Nothing that would indicate anything. There was a old tractor 20 feet away from there, but it was just a sort of a small, like a front yard almost, with an old tree stump. We'd leave the area and we'd feel fine. Inside the house, you didn't really feel that pressure, but I always felt like I wanted to have my back to a wall in that house. Didn't feel like I was going to get attacked or anything like this, but it was just one less direction I had to keep my eyes on. Like I said, it was never anything where I felt like I was in danger, but it was just that I'm being watched. And we did hear light switches being flicked in that house, which was odd because there's been no power there for 30 years. 20, 30 years, however long it's been abandoned. And we could hear the light switch being flicked, and we'd go back to the room and it would stop, and we'd turn around and take a step out the door and click, click, click continuously again. But we could never capture that one on. We could capture it on audio, multiple audio recorders, but never get it on camera, which was frustrating. So I did get physical contact. I had one investigation. It was the third investigation I did out there. I'm standing in the doorway looking into the house, and after all of us heard an audible growl right next to me, I felt 3 fingers run down from the top of my head down to between my shoulder blades. And it wasn't forceful, but it was like you could feel the pressure going down. And it's when I was a little taken back by that. And I did, you can hear me say, when the growl occurred, God, I hope that recorded. And it was clear as day on the audio recorder and the camera. And that's, it was daytime out there at that time. We decided to try a daylight investigation. That was the only time anybody ever got touched. I did 5 investigations at that house, and that was the only occurrence. But it was such, like I said, coinciding with the growl and then the 3 fingers. It was a little off, but like it was a little unsettling, just because you get into the whole deep end there with the 3 is the whole demonic thing. But yeah, it was quite interesting though. And unfortunately, after that was that was the third investigation. We did 5 out there. Went back there about 2 months ago, and the house had burnt down, unfortunately. But so can't do any more there. But yeah, that was an interesting one.
My name is Linda Corino, and I've been in the paranormal field for over 40 years. Rob's case is interesting in that this is about a house and a location that a friend mentioned to him, told him about 3 years ago, I believe he said. And when he first found out about it and first went there, he said that it was odd because the birds, the crickets, you could hear all the birds and the crickets, and then all of a sudden it would become deadly quiet, which was interesting because anyone who's ever been in an active location will mention that, the frequencies in that location are affected. So sometimes you'll hear a lot of noise, the sort of cacophony of sounds, and then deadly quiet. Everything will go completely quiet. It affects and influences the frequencies in the area, the atmosphere. So that in itself is very telling. It means that there's definitely an activity in that location, something that you sometimes can't just pinpoint, but it's there, and your instincts kick in immediately. He did say that he felt watched immediately, and he felt watched by things that are there. So not just one thing, but things that were there. So that was interesting. He said that he felt watched from different directions. Most people who do end up in an active area feel that they're watched. And as I mentioned, it's an instinctive thing. You just know when somebody is watching you, when someone's hiding in the wings and kind of staring at you and looking at your every move. So that's exactly how he felt. He did say that he found out that there was a fire there, that there was a couple perhaps that lived there, but it was definitely hard to find a lot of information about that particular location. There were no leads really, but that there were things he found while he was there in terms of paranormal investigating. So there were a lot of EVPs. Now, for those people out there who don't know what an EVP is, it's an electronic voice phenomena. And it means that sometimes on electronic equipment, you can hear things that you can't pick up with the naked ear. So he did get a few EVPs while he was there, and there were specific words that were mentioned. So fire and pain and tears. So this would indicate that perhaps there was a fire there. And he did say that he found out that there was a fire, a couple had lived there. So that was validation for him that there was a fire and that things had happened there. He mentioned that there were stories from people around the area, ghost lights, lights in the trees, by the house, floating in the yard. Sometimes those can be described as orbs, and orbs are much disputed in the paranormal community. Some people believe that orbs do not exist, that they are nothing more than lens flare or perhaps moisture. But a lot of people who do experience orbs talk about the fact that in very, very active locations, they are there, and they are their spirit activity, their energy that definitely comes through in the form of a globular thing that moves around, and it has a light source. So when he talks about, these stories, it is very indicative that perhaps this might very well be a very busy place in terms of, paranormal activity. He said that a lot of people mention that when they drive by, they kind of put their foot on the gas a little more because there's a strange vibe about the place. And again, most people do say that when something is active, they feel it. It's an instinct. So if it has a vibe that's not very welcoming, then people certainly don't want to be there. He did say that when he walked in, he felt that he found his place. And I thought that was a very different thing for someone to say. He did say that it was hard to explain how he felt, but he did feel that something was going to happen, that there was an energy there. And when he first went there, it was in the middle of winter, and yet he heard water running. That's really interesting. Most people talk about hearing water running if there's a lot of energetic activity in a location, because water, as we know, it means that there's energy, there's something there, there's something alive, there's something running. And so that was an interesting thing for him to say. He also said that he got a clear EVP when he was walking around asking, is anybody there? He got a clear EVP that said, "We are watching you," which definitely, harkens back to when he said, "I really felt like there were things watching me there." So definitely that is validation, 100%. He asked, how many, and certain words came through. And one of the words that came through was hole. And when he looked back on some of the footage of him at the moment, apparently above him was a hole in the ceiling. So that validates that perhaps there was definitely something there that was watching, that knew that it looked like there was a hole in the ceiling. Somebody mentioned that there were orbs coming out of the house, but he did say that there were lots of EVPs, one-word responses, that there was a child giggling that he picked up on as well. Child spirits tend to be very playful spirits. Whether they're actually children is one thing as well, because sometimes child spirits are other spirits pretending to be children. Sometimes when you talk about more malevolent or demonic hauntings, paranormal investigators might talk about child ghosts and how demons can perhaps disguise themselves as children. So that's always an interesting thing. He said that on this first trek there, that his cousin's girlfriend wasn't feeling very comfortable and had to go back and sit in the truck. And when you're not comfortable in a location, it does really mean that something is affecting the environment. So again, this would validate that there was something environmental that was happening in that location. And it's also, definitely hits you over the head when he talks about the pressure. There was a pressure wave that was hitting them. It was difficult to breathe. It wasn't painful, but there was a thickness. There was a pressure in the atmosphere. And again, when spirits can affect the atmospheric pressure, it means that, there's an energy there, and they themselves are energy, and they're affecting the energy of the area. And because you're picking up on it, they're affecting you as well. Now, inside the house, he didn't say that there was any kind of a pressure like there was outside of the house on the property, but that he wanted his back to the wall all the time because, again, there was that watchful nature that was happening in the house. He said that he heard the light switches being flicked. There was no power to the place, but the light switches were being flicked. They got it on audio, but not on video. So they didn't actually see it, but they heard it. That's very interesting. So it means that something was moving those light switches up and down. So definitely there was an energy in the area. Physical contact. Well, on the third investigation, there was an audible growl that they picked up. And there were 3 fingers that went from the top of his head down to his shoulder blades. And this happened in the daytime. This was the only time that he ever felt sort of unsettled, and that he felt that there was any kind of physical interaction. That's very interesting. He talked about the 3 fingers, and any paranormal investigator will tell you that, 3 is a very important number. A lot of investigators will talk about, it's the mocking of the Trinity. It's that whole demonic thing. Now, whether it was demonic or not, we won't really know. And the reason that we won't was because eventually they had gone back and the house had burned down, which I thought was very interesting. So again, you've got that element of fire. There was a fire there before. There was a fire there again. And the fingers, when he was asked about anything that, gripped him, anything that had a lasting effect on him, he mentioned the fingers, that, that kind of affected him. And it left him with the desire to know more about the paranormal. He wanted to document it. He wanted to, to really research it. He wanted the excitement of being a paranormal investigator. He loved that kind of, unknown. He wanted to interact with it. There was something exciting. He did mention as well that there were footsteps that he heard. The grass was moving. Other people have mentioned that could indicate a more active, more intelligent haunting. So he was very excited about this paranormal experience. This house was so exciting to him. The atmosphere was really exciting, and it really led him down the garden path to wanting to continue on this path of paranormal investigating. So there were a lot of elements in this story. Thank you so much for sharing it, and that's pretty incredible.